Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stop the Burnout Psycho Training. Before we get going, this is all about helping you stop the burnout and also decide how to regain capacity and before deciding your next career move. This training is for people who are maybe not feeling in the right place right this moment in their careers. They're overwhelmed, tired, lost motivation. We'll talk about how to get past that and really create a life that you love. Before we start, I want to introduce myself to those of you who might not know me. My name is Maggie Perotin. I'm the founder and owner of Stairway to Leadership. I'm a business and leadership coach, and I predominantly work with business owners, helping them grow and scale businesses and set them up in a way that allows them to have a sellable asset that down the line they could sell. Another benefit of that is that when you do have a business that it's a sellable asset, it means the business is not dependent on you 24/7. So as you grow your business, you can actually enjoy a life. Now, I will share my story a little bit, but before later. But just so you know, I wasn't a business owner all my life. I was a corporate leader at some point, and I decided to change my career. And part of that story is really a reason for this training today. Now, if you are joining directly through registration of the training and you have access to comments, you are more than welcome to ask questions and comment as we go. Also, there will be a time for that at the end. If you're maybe watching the recording or on a different platform and I might not be see your comments live, then I'll definitely go back if you tag me and reply to all the questions in the comments. So let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Say hi, say your name, where you're coming from. I would love to know. I'm very happy that you're here. Thank you for taking time out of your probably busy and packed schedules to be here with me today. So let's get through to agenda. What are we going to cover today? First, we're going to cover, okay, is this for you? You maybe are discovering this training or you signed up for this training. So I'll just get a little bit more who is this training will serve best. Then I'll share a bit of my story because it is relevant to this training. Hi, Patricia. Great to see you watching from Canada. Awesome. Thank you for coming. We'll talk about also dangers of making decisions when you are in the overwhelmed, burned out stage, and why probably that's not the best time to make like big career decisions or business move or personal decisions. And of course, we'll talk about what to do instead. And I will share with you 3 science-backed tools for stress reduction and mental clarity. And I'll also explain why it's important. Those tools have been invaluable for me throughout my journey. They give great results to my clients. You will be able to implement them on your own just after this training. We'll talk also through clear process. So it's a decision-making process that I used when I decided on, changing my career from corporate leader to a business owner, and a little bit how I will share a little bit how I did it, and then how to really make the best decision for you, whether you want to stay in the career you want, or you are in, or grow somehow, or shift, or start your own thing. And then at the end, we'll do some Q&A and next steps. If you want to get in touch with me, I will tell you how to do it. Okay, let's get started then. So now, who is this training best for? So I've actually talked to many people, and recently I've talked to like a combination of conversations that really inspired me to do this training, where people feel exhausted and overwhelmed and sometimes demotivated in whatever they're doing right now professionally. They lack fulfillment. And then because of that, they start questioning, am I in the right place? Like, should I maybe be starting doing something else? And those could be many reasons for that. Like, sometimes as our life progresses and so on. I was talking to a former colleague of mine and a friend who said, you know what, maybe like I can't handle necessarily the pressure and the stress the same way like I used to. And sometimes it's because also think about your ability to handle stress as a cop. And if you keep adding challenges, whether they're personal or professional or combination of both to this cup, when it fills, because all of us have a certain limit, then if you try to keep adding, it just becomes this overwhelm where we can't function anymore, right? So in order to handle new stresses, sometimes you need to like empty the cup of stress, right? Sometimes it's because, there are situations that, or you've been in the same position in the same role for many years and there's some changes around you, and whatever new things are coming at you, you feel drained or overwhelmed. And I definitely was in that at some point in my career there were, I started realizing that the new situation I was in, I wasn't seeing the impact that of my work. I wasn't seeing that the kind of like there was no light in the tunnel. No matter what I did, people weren't happy all the time. And no matter how much I tried, I couldn't find fulfillment. And when we are in that situation, when we're demotivated, when we don't feel fulfilled, that drains our energy even more, right? And sometimes you might be at the moments where maybe you're not sure, you're at the crossroad with your careers, you might not necessarily be super stressed, but you're not fully happy. You're in that as I call it like B situation or B plus situation where you're really good at what you do, you have a level of success, but deep down like I could do better, right? It's not what I want. And then you have friends, like I was talking to somebody as well, who are telling you, oh, you're so great at this, maybe you should start a business, maybe you should do this. And you're like, well, I have this something here that I built that pays the bills and, probably it creates a certain level of life for me, right? But I'm not fully satisfied. What should I do? Because even if I start something new or try to find something, it's scary, right? It's scary to leave a comfortable place we're in for something new, unknown. So if you're in one of these or somewhere in between, this is definitely for you. Hi, Trina. Great to see you. I hope everything is okay where you are in California there. But thank you for coming. So now I want to share a little bit of my story, and because of course it relates to what we're talking about. So I used to be a corporate leader. I had a very good career in corporate that moved me from, entry level positions in my 20s to managers, senior managers, and then more lower level executives. And for many, many years, I really enjoyed it. And I have to say, I had many good mentors. I'm a big learner. I've learned a lot in the industry I was in. It was always challenging. There was new things. I moved in different departments doing different things, which I loved. So it got me to get experience in various level of business. But then, when I didn't have kids and it was just me or my husband or my partner, my priorities were different. And then we started a family and I started having kids, and really my responsibilities increased, right? So now, just from before the kids, I just focused on my career and then relationship with my partner. But as the kids joined, it almost like my day never ended, right? It was nonstop. It was demanding work that was always challenging, always something going on. And then at home, small kids, daycare, responsibilities, and so on. So I definitely found myself at some point getting really tired, and like Thursday evenings seemed to be the day where I was like too tired even to be patient with the kids, that I wasn't feeling good about when, let's say, I lost my patience with them, and then I felt as a bad mother. So I started looking into doing something about it. I've been definitely always a person who was thinking like, okay, if you don't like the situation you're in right now, it's in your power to change it. You need to do something about it, not just complain, right? I'm not a complainer. So I started looking at it. How can I reduce my stress? How can I do something that will allow me to, be a great mother for my kids all week long, not just Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and by Thursday, I'm too tired to do that, right? So I started at that point already in my career. I started looking into some basic mindfulness practices and some, um, including like meditation or breathing techniques or things like that that would reduce my stress that really helped me. But then what kind of pushed me over the edge a little bit was a situation that led to my burnout, where I found myself, and that was like one moment in the career, it wasn't nonstop, but I found myself for like 6 months um, really exhausted and working nonstop without breaks. Weekends, I was working in the office, at home, weekends, and in the place where no matter what I did, I couldn't win. No matter what I did, people weren't happy. The clients weren't happy, the executives weren't happy, and so on. And it wasn't just me not being effective, without getting into details. It was just a situation when there wasn't enough people to do the work that we needed to do. There maybe weren't resources in place to help us succeed. But that experience, which I'm grateful for looking back, made me to question my path, right? Put me in that situation where I wasn't sure anymore if I wanted to continue my corporate career. Um, and now, sometimes when we find ourselves in those situations, people, for example, react, right? And they're like, okay, I'm just going to quit. I didn't do that because I knew that, making decisions when you're in a low or when your emotional state is not balanced can be long term not great for you. And I'll explain it in a second. But it definitely started I started questioning what I wanted to do. But the first thing I did in order to really determine, is it just my exhaustion talking, or is there something there, was to create space in my brain and also emotional capacity. So reduce the overwhelm, reduce the stress, to really think and decide what I wanted to do about it. And despite the fact that my situation was really extreme at this point, again, going back to who I was saying, okay, I have to do something, right? Like I can't function this way. I was getting angry, really like I wasn't in a good place. So what I did is I started on a path of high performance. And sometimes, as they say, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And through some Facebook ads, I came across high performance coaching program that helped me, without changing my circumstances, find that emotional calm and capacity to handle the things that were happening to me, right? It helped me establish even more habits and put them more into like routines and systems where I became even more effective with my time. I always found myself quite effective with my time, and I was very proud of the fact that I could really handle a lot and so on. But I couldn't believe that after implementation of certain practices and habits, my capacity of what I could accomplish in a day in less time just skyrocketed. And what it also gave me is the fact that, I started setting some boundaries and, pushing back on things and saying like, I can't be working weekends anymore, 20 hours a day nonstop, whether we have people or not. Like, I just can't do that. I have, a 4-year-old at that point, I think, and a 6-year-old, and they're staring at me in my living room saying, Mommy, I need you. And Mommy's in front of the computer, kind of frozen, can't do anything. So I started pushing back, setting boundaries, but at the same time, being more effective with what I do. And that started creating clarity and emotional capacity as to what was next for me and how did I want to take intentionally my career and my personal life further. So, for example, the first thing I actually did is started volunteering. This was something on my mind. a big believer of giving back. But again, busy work, and then first small kids, right? I always thought like, oh, I can't, I don't have time, I don't have time. But what I learned through high performance was that if something is important to me, I can create time. If I get really clear on my priorities and I really manage my schedule well, I always have time and I can always create time for what I want. Um, and I don't have to be busy anymore or feel busy anymore. So I went from I'm busy, my days run me, I don't have time for anything, to I'm in control of my schedule. I can always create time for things that I want. I'm not busy. It doesn't mean my schedule is not full, but I control it. It's all intentional. So I started volunteering a bit. Then I decided, okay, now I have all this capacity and so on. I signed up for an MBA, executive MBA. And that's something I always wanted. It was like a little bit of a goal and dream of mine to up, update my education. I had a master's degree back from, early 20s at the point, and it was a bit of business and, you know, um, international relations and things like that. But as I was growing as a business leader, I always wanted to update that education. I signed up for an MBA. It was an online MBA. It was great. And then I decided that I wanted to do things my way. So like all that journey led me to realization that I was getting to the point in my career when I wanted to try new things, where I wanted to make decisions on my own. Because, what led to the burnout, or the situation that created the burnout, was decisions were made above my head and I didn't have influence over them. And I realized that I was ready to really just do my own decisions, make my own decisions, and just um, live the consequences of those decisions. I also realized that I wanted to do what I loved and what filled me, which was coaching and developing people. Yes, as a business leader, I had a team members, and I was coaching them, and I was building teams and turning teams around. And I realized throughout the career, but that was the thing that was really filling my cup, whereas dealing with 80% of other things that I was dealing in my work, I was good at it. I was successful at it, but it was draining me. It was stressful. So I told myself, I have to flip that, right? I have to get to the point where 80% or 90% of what I'm doing is filling me up and giving me energy professionally. And then there'll always be 10, 20% that maybe I don't like or is frustrating, but it's not the majority of my week or my day. And that sort of, way of thinking and the process that I'm going to share shortly, combined with, okay, my skill set is in business and I love business and I have all this experience and I have now this additional education and I want to continue, led me to start my coaching business. Now, I didn't quit right away. I ran it on the side, again, going back to having the skills to do it and systems and processes to do it, where I was at some point doing a, corporate leadership role, and I actually got promoted one more time before I left full time. So I had more responsibility. I was doing an MBA. I was growing my business on the side, and then COVID happened. So I had very small kids or relatively young kids in at home, and I was able to do all of that without overwhelm, without burning out, volunteering, that didn't stop, and still have some time for me, because I created that capacity and that ability to do it. So why we don't want to make rushed decisions, or decisions where we are in overwhelm and burnout, and we want to take ourselves first out of that before we make major decisions. It's because then that research shows that is that when emotions are high, our sort of rational thinking intelligence is low. Okay, because what happens is when the emotion rises, especially like into more negative emotions, but even when we're too excited, amygdala, so part of the brain that's responsible for emotions, overrides prefrontal cortex, which is part of the brain where we have rational and logical thinking. I call it like the executive brain, the CEO brain, right? So there was a study done in 2014 that showed that stress shrinks prefrontal cortex activity up to 50%, right? So like it's almost like we don't have access to rational thinking when we're too overwhelmed, too stressed. So then, of course, the decision we make might be not best for us. Like they might give us relief in the moment, but long term, they might not be the best, right? Because when we're stressed, when we're overwhelmed, the brain is almost like in survival mode, right? It wants to conserve energy. And when we have to think rationally and analyze things, the pros and the cons of something, that takes a lot of energy. Now, when we're too excited, that's also a high emotion. So like as I was doing some research even to prepare for this training, I found out that even when we're too excited, that's not great because our dopamine is high and we have this unrealistic confidence where sometimes that leads to impulsive decisions because we get to, or we tend to underestimate the risks involved with the decision and then overestimate the rewards that could happen, if everything went perfect and well. So, and that is like by 40%, right? We can ignore the risk by 40% and overestimate the rewards. So that's why, sometimes decisions made out of fear and anger. And I definitely remember when I was burned out, there was a moment where I felt really trapped in the situation I was in. And I always say I'm a Sagittarius and I like my freedom as a Sagittarius. So I got really angry in that moment, right? But I knew it enough to not make rash decision, right? So I was angry at home, but I didn't quit right away, for example, for me. So when we're really angry or fearful, sometimes we make rash decision where people quit their job and they don't necessarily have a plan, and then they find themselves a month later, a few weeks later, thinking, oh my god, like now I have bills to pay and what am I going to do? So how do you find that balance? Like how do you know, is the decision that I'm making or I'm about to make, I want to make, from the right place? So as we talk, you want to create that emotional foundation where that decision is made from calm and grounded energy, where you thought through pros and cons. When I coach my clients, I always say every decision you will ever make, there's no perfect decisions out there, right? Every decision we ever make has pros and cons, have benefits and potentially risks when we make it. And we need to just evaluate and decide what is the option decision best for us right now. So it's okay to have courage, right? And the way I started my business, like I got courage. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to try it, but I'm going to try it realistically when I'm going to try it on the side and see if it's going to work, because I didn't know if it was going to work or not, right? I wasn't 100% confident. Yeah, I'm going to start this coaching business. It will take off. It will be super successful right away and I will be okay. I wasn't sure of that. And I definitely didn't want to risk, again, my family, bills and things like that had to be paid. I didn't want to take that risk financially. Okay. So how do you create that space, get yourself more calm and grounded? What can you do? So today I want to share with you 3 science-backed techniques. Some of them, they're really very easy and simple to implement, that when you do them, and especially on a regular basis, when you create a bit of a habit and routine out of them, they really can help you not only reduce stress and get you out of the overwhelm, but also put you in a day-to-day functioning when you really you feel better, and the way you handle your days, even if stressful situations come up, you handle them better. So the first one, it's box breath, This is a simple technique that I learned many years ago. It's actually used by Navy SEALs when they go into, combat or whatever they do, their operations, to reduce their anxiety. Um, and before I explain it, I want to say that there of course there's been studies around it, and then Harvard Medical School study from 2020 showed that this breathing technique activates sort of, and I'm not a medical professional, so, but parasympathetic system in our bodies that kind of reduces stress and anxiety, right? So it kind of lowers our cortisol, which is the hormone that induces stress, and it lowers the anxiety. So the way you do it, it's super simple and super fast. So that's one of my like secret powers that I share with you today, because it can take less than a minute and it has profound effect, is that you inhale, right? You breathe in on counting to four. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you hold the breath and counting to four in your mind. So you hold 1, 2, 3, 4. Then you exhale while counting to four, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you hold again, and you repeat that 4 times. And when I started using it, I did that first thing in the morning. I still do it to this day, but I started doing it in the morning when I just woke up. I would get out of bed, stand up, like kind of ground myself, and did that. And that was all I did, because I wasn't definitely in the position at that time in my life where I could just implement a big morning routine for 30 minutes, meditating and so on. So I just did literally a minute or less of this breathing exercise. And within maybe a week, 4 days, I felt the difference. And I felt the difference throughout the day. I somehow I felt calmer. I felt more grounded, and I could handle the emergencies, the unexpected, the fires, whatever was going on in my day. I was just better prepared to handle it, and it didn't affect me as much. What I also did, sometimes I use that because, of course, it's short and easy to implement. So I use that throughout the day. So it was fine if I was finding myself, getting again wrapped up too much or overwhelmed too much. Even if I would go to the bathroom, and then in the bathroom, just do that. Okay. It's very powerful. I actually, like, in my work outside of coaching, like business people, you know, as my core thing, I also mentor sometimes underprivileged youth or just young people, young leaders. And I have this mentee currently that actually has a social anxiety. And when I, helped him, or I introduced him to this technique, he started using it throughout the day. And he's been telling me that, as he was going to interviews, finding to find work and so on, it was helping him calm down, and it was helping him to get to the point where in an interview he was more calmer. So of course, when we're more calmer, we can remember, what to say, or remember, express ourselves better, relate our experience to whatever. So it's been helping him so much, and I'm super proud of him. Just recently he has a summer job that is in his field. He's a graphic designer. He's going back to school for this new year, and he's already landed like a paid internship. So he's doing so well. And of course, it's not just that technique, but like I'm sharing this story because he told me it was so powerful for him, and it was powerful for me. So super easy to implement. I highly recommend you do it starting tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning. If you do it for 4 days, you will see the difference, I promise. Okay, the second technique, time blocking. Okay, time blocking your schedule. And before I explain it, it's an MIT study method that shows that when you block a larger chunk of time to work on something that requires your focus, not necessarily to do emails, but if you have a lot of emails to process, sometimes It's important too. But when you have something that you need to focus on, a project or, assignment, something that requires focus and it's hard to do in between meetings or in between emails, when you book a chunk of time, minimum 90 minutes, it allows you to get into flow. And the flow is that state when we're not only super effective and productive, it's kind of like we're just in the zone and we're working on something, we also get better ideas. So it allows us to be more creative, and therefore the output, whatever we come up with, is better. And why 90 minutes? Because it takes us a minimum 15-20 minutes to actually get into that deep focus. Okay, so when you use time blocking techniques for your various tasks throughout the day, make sure that, of course, you have no distractions, right? And it's not to say that, oh, if you have a task that requires 15 minutes, you block 90 minutes for it. Here we're talking about, some deep work, something that requires focus that might even take you more than 90 minutes, but at least within the first 90 minutes, you will get, if you book a couple of those blogs, within a couple of blogs, you'll finish, right? Or, creating a presentation, preparing, like things like that. Okay, so when I started doing it, no distractions. So you have to turn off your phone, turn off your emails, no distractions. And also what worked for me is doing those blogs in time when I was least likely to be distracted. So for example, when I was in a situation when I was doing my executive MBA and, trying to run my business on the side and also having a job, I realized, okay, the best time for me to, let's say, do my assignments for MBA or do some work for the business would be early in the morning before my kids got up, before, of course, I was going to work and so on. So I would adjust my schedule to get enough sleep, but get up really early and have that 90 minutes. And really, I was able to complete my school projects much faster than initially I was told, or much more. I was told that I would need, 20 hours a week. I was able to do a lot of the things that I was required to do in the MBA in 10 to 15, depending on the week, right? So it never took me 20 hours, but because I was so effective in scheduling those time blocks. And then at work, it was the same. If I had to work on something that required my focus, I would pick time, usually also first thing in the morning, but sometimes later in the afternoon when other people, went home or where people weren't there yet, to focus on some work that required me to, not be in the meeting and not get distracted and so on. So that's, what I want to also share is that one of my current clients who actually started working with me not that long ago, she came overwhelmed and way too busy for what she needs to be in her business. And before, of course, trying to decide what to let go of all the commitments that she had, I just introduced her to time blocking with a weekly planning habit that I also teach my clients, just to help her manage better the load that she took on herself, the commitments she had. And just with that, so without deleting anything just yet, she reduced her overwhelm and she was able to accomplish the projects that she committed to faster than she thought she would, and reduce stress. So she was so happy when that happened. She sent me this message on LinkedIn saying, hey, Maggie, like I made it through that project, which was at first overwhelming. And I just submitted the final draft and all of it without actually too much overwhelm because I used the time blocking and weekly planning. So, she wanted to thank me for that because it's such a simple thing that gave her such great results. Okay, the third practice, which is my favorite, is nature exposure. Now, this one might be a little bit more time consuming or not as easy to implement depending on where you live. But The study, like one of the studies in the University of Michigan from 2019 shows that even if you're 20 minutes in nature, no screen, no phones, and so on, let's say in the park or in the forest or some green area close to where you live, reduces your stress and it relaxes you much more than, let's say, maybe just taking a walk or being in more urban areas. Okay. Now, of course, if you can do 20 minutes daily in nature, amazing. But if you can't, if you live in the area where you need to drive a little bit to even get to some more greenery than like just trees maybe around the sidewalk, then even weekly is great. There is this book that if you're an avid reader or Audible listener, I highly recommend. It's called 3 Day Effect by Florence Williams. And in that book, they show case studies and they talk about how prolonged exposure to nature is even more beneficial. So, kind of 3 to 5 days in nature, they were showing how it actually helps people with PTSD to lower, like really calm their I don't know how to say it, challenges. But the story I have is during COVID, when it was stressful for everybody and scary for everybody. And my kids at that time were, I think, 6 going on to 7, I think 6 and 9. So my son started COVID in like senior kindergarten, which was horrible. And trying to get them on the computer and so on. And then my daughter started in grade 2 when COVID started. It was scary for them and it was stressful just trying to get on the screen and be on the screen. So what we implemented with my husband, outside of just daily walks in our neighborhood, which is, it has trees, but definitely doesn't have a park or green area. But we live maybe 10 minutes drive away from a forest. We started taking the kids there because we could. I'm in Canada, in Toronto, so we were able to go to the forest weekly. So every weekend, on Saturday or on Sunday, there wasn't anything better to do anyways, we would take the kids. And as much as they at first revolted and they didn't like it or they were complaining because we would take them on hikes, it was really helping them cope with stress of the day to day, the Zooms and the computers and so on. And it also bonded us as a family. Those daily walks just around the neighborhood and then going into nature had really profound impact. So highly recommend doing that if you're not doing it yet. Okay, so then let's just assume now you're calm and grounded and you emptied a bit of that filled bucket of overwhelm and stress, and you're ready to make some decisions about your next moves in your career or in your business and, professionally, even personally. What do you do? So I looked back at how I make some big decisions, especially how I made the decision of starting my business, how I did it, and then eventually, leave my corporate career on my terms and focus on my business full time. So the acronym is very relevant. It's clear. To be clear, how to decide your next move. So C stands for clarifying your core values. So really understanding what's important to you. What are the values? So for me, when I was thinking of maybe potentially I do want business, but like, would that work for me? Even from the fulfillment things, what was important to me? So I knew that, I wanted to have freedom and agency of making decisions, freedom of time to spend time with my family and not having to be always like compromising and feeling bad and thinking like, oh my God, I can't do this. But, I didn't want that stress anymore all the time of juggling. So freedom of time. What was also important for me was growth, learning, doing new things. And I found like, hey, definitely starting a business where I've never really run a business outside of maybe doing some side hustle tutoring when I was at the university. would be that growth for me and challenging, right? So those were the things that I was thinking, what was important to me. Then the second part, then L stands for look ahead. So then I thought, okay, I was about 39 at that time. So it's, sometimes at 39 or 40, you think like, oh, maybe I'm too old to do that. I definitely had that thought. Maybe I should just, get another promotion or couple and then just wait till retirement. But then I thought, like, realistically, I have another 25, 30 years of work because professional work is important to me. If I enjoy something, I might not want to even retire at 65, right? So another 25, 26 years, which was more at that time to when I started, let's say, full-time career at 25 after university, right? So like I had actually more time. So when I started envisioning myself, do I really see myself doing what I'm doing or doing my boss's job or my boss's job in 15 years? For me, the answer was no. Okay. That might be different for you. For you, if you envision yourself in 15 years, you might be like, yeah, I want that. Actually, now that I'm calm and grounded, I enjoy it again, right? Or I find my passion, I find my spark. So it might be, for you, might be different, right? But try to envision yourself. What do I want to do in 15 years? Because 10 and 15 years, it's a long enough time where we can actually accomplish a lot of things, pretty much anything we want, right? In a year, it might be challenging, but in 15, if we take steps towards it, chances are, if we're committed, we're totally getting there. So that's for looking ahead. Then E is exploring your possibilities. Okay, so now that I more or less I see my long-term goal, how do I want to lead my life? Where do I want to be? What are my possibilities to get there? So when I was exploring, like, yeah, you know what? I think I do want to focus on coaching. I love coaching people. I love to see them grow their confidence and grow. I really know what each person needs. I'm so good at it. I've done that in my career and I want to do more of it. What are my possibilities? So then, of course, like I looked into coaching, into consulting, and then, different types of coaching, but I also really love business. So I'm like, okay, decided on the business. But then other possibilities like, okay, well, I could quit now in theory, right? And kind of end that, but like, is the business going to work? So maybe that's not an option for me, right? Maybe another possibility is to find a coaching business where I could just work as an employee, right? Or another option, start something on the side now that you can manage your time and so on, and see if you can take it somewhere. So those are sort of exploring, like, what are my options? What are my possibilities? A is then aligning yourself with an option that speaks mostly to you, that makes most sense to you, and sort of choose the path, right? And create, and from that, and as you're exploring the possibilities, exploring the pros and cons, the best case scenario, the worst case scenario. Again, for example, for me, when I decided, like, oh, I think I'm gonna start a business on the side, okay, the best case scenario is it's going to work. It's gonna take, I don't know, how long it's gonna take me, but let's just say year 2, 3 years is gonna work, and I'll just focus on it full time. Worst case scenario, it's not gonna work. I will realize it's not for me completely. I didn't know what I was getting myself into and I'm not going to like it. Then I'll just shut it down, right? I'm not going to do it. Or I will find another job, or I will do this, right? So like that worst case, best case scenario, pros and cons, it's a great way to sort of align and choose it. And then once you do that, still in your A steps, you want to think about, okay, what is my short-term plan? So it's great, I have a vision for 10, 15 years, but what do I want to accomplish in the next 6 months or in the next year? So then the last part, the fifth step is R, meaning you need to resolve to take action, meaning you need to commit to it, right? Because if you just think of an idea and then you keep it an idea, then you'll always be in that like, well, should I do it? Should I not? Or what if this happens? Or you might always like have that regret, right? So you want to commit to taking whatever steps you want to take one step at a time. Like anything we built, if you probably look back at whatever career you've had or the life you've built, and parts of it that you're really proud of, that you know, they're there where you wanted them to be, you did it by taking one step at a time. So that's with anything else. It's the same. So it was the same for me. You know, the first step was, okay, explore what are my legal options of starting a business, right? What legal entity would it be? And then, you know, I found a nonprofit organization local to me that was helping people who wanted to start a business with those things, right? So that allowed me to connect with them, to use their services and kind of get that guidance. So then step by step, I started building it while still doing my school and doing and you know, working full time. But where it led me is where I am now, right? So that was, I don't remember anymore, the start 5 years ago, 6 years ago, almost. But step by step, it led me to getting to the point with the business where I felt confident that if I left my career, we would be okay financially as a family. We talked about it with my husband. We created a plan. And I'm where I am, where I do what I love, like 80% of the time, right? What I wanted. I feel fulfilled. I feel amazing talking to my clients every day, right? I have the freedom of time that I wanted to have. I'm definitely have the agency of making my decisions and full creativity, which I love. Doesn't mean that I always make perfect decisions, but I love that ability to make them and kind of, you know, deal with the consequences of that. You know, seeing the difference in my clients and seeing how they succeed is great for me. So that's sort of the process that I took to start my journey to be where I am now, and then of course continue as we go. Okay, so we're almost getting to the end, but I do want to share one more story from one of my clients, Lena, and then invite you to connect with me if you want to chat further, and then we'll have period for questions and answer Q&A right now if you have any questions. So Lena, I remember she came to me for a complimentary consultation that I offer. And we talked about she wasn't sure. She was in that moment where she was on the road, like crossroads of the career. She was living in Canada and she's a very creative person, you know, hair stylist, but also love to create content, very good in marketing and so on. And she always wanted to move to Dubai, but was scared and wasn't sure what she would do if, you know, moving to a new country and starting freelancing with her haircutting business, if that really worked. And, you know, we just talked. I offered her, you know, usually what I do in the consultations, like ask people a lot of questions to understand like their challenges and what their goals are and so on. I always tell them what I see and give them some tips. And at that point, she wasn't yet ready to get coaching and so on, but our conversations really stuck with her. And she, you know, went away on her own path. And a few months later, she came back to me saying, "Hey Maggie, like, I think I'm ready to move." Right? She took whatever coaching I gave her, whatever advice I gave her, I don't even remember anymore because it's been a few years. And she started implementing it a little bit in her life. And then a few months later, she came back and she's like, "Maggie, I'm ready to move. Like I have everything arranged and I'm going to join you for coaching, but I'm there." And now fast forward, I think year and a half we've been coaching together. I need to fact check that, but over a year. And she has a thriving freelance practice in cutting hair in Dubai. People like line up to book with her. And she does very unorthodox things because she goes to people's homes. She takes deposits, whereas usually if you go to a dresser, you're used to paying after. People pay no problem. She's thinking about really creating a big brand and some other projects that we're working on. And it's she's in a great place. So it's possible. And of course, she has bigger and bigger goals, but it's possible to shift and change. And it doesn't have to be rushed, and it can be done in that calm and grounded space. So the next step is, if you do want to connect and talk about your situation, even if it's just to talk through with someone, as I said, I offer complimentary consultations. You can find the link at my website, which is stairwaytoleadership.com, and I'll share in the comments wherever I can. And then I would love to hear, answer some of your questions. So if you have any questions, let me know or type them up. If you're here with me live on the, training, then type them up in the comments. If you're watching it from any other platform, then just tag me in the comments and I'll go back and reply. All right. Trina, I appreciate what you have said, but I have found that in spite of volunteering on a board of directors, redecorating the house, redesigning not only my garden, but my neighbor's landscaping, I'm still not finding a spark. I'm not able to move nor change roles. And I know I'm not a person to be an entrepreneur. So how to find that spark? I would start, Trina, without knowing more, I would really start going back to the process. The clear process is going back to clarifying your core values. Like, what are the things that are important to me very in general in life, right? Is maybe creativity is important for you, right? Because you redecorated the house, redesigned like your garden. Maybe there is something there. But what is important to you? For me, it was definitely time freedom. My family, right, is very important. I wanted to be able to spend time with them. And I knew by then, so I definitely had that advantage when I knew that I loved coaching people. Like, just from coaching my team members in the many positions that I had, but it kind of like dawned on me, like, yeah, this is what I love to do, right? So digging deep a little bit into what brings me joy, what fulfills me, and what's important to me, I would start there. Because it finds like you've tried different things, but maybe if you haven't started there, I would start there. When I coach with my clients, I have an exercise to take them through, like very step by step, but you can also do it on your own. I will, let me just share my website. There. But the one thing that at least which is great, is that, yeah, you are not an entrepreneurial person. And that's great. That's, you already know, right? That. So then if that's the case, then thinking about what fills me up, what's important to me, and then kind of exploring the options of what industries would I want to work in, right? And then looking at industries, and it doesn't have to be an industry, you've been at. Like, in my career, I remember I've worked in so the very first job I had, I was an executive assistant / translator to a chief legal counsel of a pharmaceutical company. I'm originally Polish, so I'm an immigrant to Canada. I've been in Canada for 20 years, but I was born and raised in Poland. So it was one of the big pharmaceutical companies. So that was my first job. And then I moved to pharmaceutical industry. Then I moved into sales, into like really farming. So I was selling like vegetables away from the producer to wholesalers, right? And then going to different fairs and so on. And then I moved from there, I moved to fashion business, also sales, like those particular jobs were sales, but nothing to do with, with vegetables and fashion. It was fabric, right? And then I came to Canada, and when you come and you're looking for a job, you're like, you know what? I'll take anything. And when I started in the industry, I spent many years in. I didn't know that industry existed, right? So we have a lot of skills that we acquire that are transferable that we can apply in different industries. So if you're in a place where you know what fills you up and what maybe industry or what are you would love to work on, I'm sure you have a lot of transferable skills where you could move. I hope that helps. Any other questions? I'll give it a second. But as I said, if if you're watching this and you're like, Maggie, I don't want to ask questions in public necessarily, or I really want to talk through certain things, then I do invite you to, book a consultation, complimentary with me, and we can talk about it. And then you can, whether you want to continue coaching or not, it doesn't matter. There's a lot of value that I offer during those conversations where you'll be able to take things with you, and then run them by your own. It just gives me an opportunity to get to know your situation better, right? Because I can ask you more in-depth questions during the 50 minutes we have together. Okay. All right. So if there is no more questions, we're right on time, and I want to be respectful of your time. I want to thank Trina and Patricia for coming. Thank for those of you who might be watching somewhere else and I just can't see you watching. And thanks to everybody who will be watching on the replay. Always feel free to reach out if we're connected, or connect with me on social media. I'm active mostly on LinkedIn or on Instagram. Under my name, you can find me under Maggie Perotin. So feel free to connect with me there. And if you have any questions, always reach out. I'll be happy to answer. Okay, have a fantastic rest of your day. Thank you for coming. Bye.